So let me share a little bit about BACS. BACS stands for Bay Area Christian Singles. It's a group that Nancy and I started, and the reason why we started it was because we saw a need to address those things in the Christian world that we felt like needed to be tweaked and kind of changed as far as how we approach dating and marriage. Because in the church, a lot of times we are taught certain things that maybe we just heard from that old uncle or that old aunt, right? Things like, when you don't want to get married, then you'll get married, right? Things like that. And a lot of these things sound really good. I mean, they sound really godly, but at the end of the day, when you break it down a little bit, it isn't. It just sounds that way. And if we have these flawed views, it is going to keep you from getting married. I know that's a fact because we see it all the time. We have a lot of people in our group who come to the group and they don't take any action. Maybe they're already in their 30s, 40s, or older, and they think of dating like, hey, God's just going to make it happen. And they end up coming to our group and they start hearing something different and they realize, like, you know what, I wish I heard this before. So I could start putting into practice these things back when I was in my 20s. So this is the mission of BACS: equipping and connecting Bay Area Christian singles for dating and marriage. So we are not a singles fellowship. We are a fellowship for single Christians who are intentional about dating and marriage. That's the distinctive about our group. So we have a requirement in our group that every single person that comes to BACS is a Christian, is single, not in a serious relationship. And third, they're open to dating and marriage. That's the requirement because we want to be laser focused about what our group does. So our mission is about equipping and connecting. We believe in equipping because if you come to me and you are not ready for dating and marriage, I could bring 100 amazing guys lined up outside in this hallway, or 100 girls lined up, and you could go on a date with them every single day for the next 100 days. But the thing is, if you are struggling with something in your life, your view about God, salvation, family, marriage, if you are struggling with life maturity issues, maybe you're just really, really shy and you can't have a conversation, or maybe you're the type of person you're struggling with certain sin issues in your life, or maybe you just don't even know how to approach the dating process. If you have 100 opportunities but you're not ready for them, you're going to squander them. And there's no point to say, hey, I'm just going to meet more people if there's some baggage we have that we haven't addressed that's going to keep us from moving forward at all. That's why we focus on equipping. And we also focus on connecting, as I said earlier, because if you go to work every single day at home and you're not meeting new Christians on a regular basis, maybe you meet one new single Christian every 3 months or something like that, I could pretty much say 1 year from now, you're probably going to be in the same relationship status as you are today. And you got to go out there and do something to change that. Our vision is this: using dating and marriage to bring out the life-transforming power of the gospel. There's a little secret about our group that we share with you guys, and you guys promise you won't let this leave the room? Okay? Our group actually is not ultimately about dating and marriage. We use dating and marriage to get to another ultimate purpose. And the other ultimate purpose is this: that we want to flesh out the gospel of your salvation and understand what it means to be saved and how it changes your life now, so that it trickles down into dating and marriage. So you don't have this idea of salvation as, I believe in Jesus and then I'm going to go to heaven when I'm 85 years old and I die. We want you to have a transformed perspective where you understand that when it comes to your salvation, it affects you right now, how you live your life, and it's going to affect how you date, and it's going to affect your marriage. And it's not just about us wanting to help you get married. It's also about you being prepared for when you are married. Because once you are married, let me tell you, it's a whole different ballgame. So that's why that's what our group is about. We use dating and marriage kind of like missionaries use English teaching. If you've ever been overseas and you've done English teaching, missionaries, short-term, long-term, they go teach English overseas, but the ultimate goal is not to teach English. The ultimate goal is to develop that relationship and have opportunity to share the gospel with those people. And essentially, that's what we're doing in this group. We are bringing the topic of dating and marriage, because if this was a seminar and our group wasn't BACS, but our group was like studying the Bible, right? Come on in, we're going to all study the Bible together. We probably won't get this turnout, right? But we're talking about dating and marriage, which is a very relevant topic. We really care about this topic. And we're using it in a way where we will flesh out the gospel, and hopefully you guys come hoping to look for tips on dating and marriage, but you guys leave with a great appreciation for your salvation. That's the ultimate purpose of our group. Today's message is titled, Checking Your Dating Checklist. Every single one of us here has a dating checklist. A dating checklist is essentially a list of who it is you want to date, who it is you want to marry. Every single person has it. You might have it back at home. Okay? Some of you wrote it when you were 13 years old and it's hidden in your night dresser right now, and you look at it every night before you go to sleep. Everyone has it. Some of us, probably the guys, don't have a list. But in that mind somewhere, they're floating checklists out there, right? The guys have some idea of who it is they're looking for. Everyone has some kind of standard. When I dated Nancy, I had high standards. And Nancy had very low standards. But nevertheless, we all have standards. Because if you didn't have any standards, you would be married already, right? But here's the thing about standards. Not everything on your checklist should be on your checklist. And there are probably things that are not on your checklist that should be on your checklist. So today what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about this dating checklist. We're going to talk about the standards that you have as far as who it is you're willing to go on a first date with and who it is you're going to marry. And we're going to talk about two categories. And we're going to break down all these items to two categories. The first category would be this, the important standards. The important standards are the standards that today we want you to hold on to. And these are critical standards that you should have, and you should not compromise on these standards. Because compromising on these standards will help you get married faster, but it's going to lead you down a troubled marriage later on. These are the important standards. And then the not as important standards are the standards that we're going to encourage you to reconsider tonight. The not as important standards are standards that you can and you probably should compromise or maybe eliminate altogether from your list. And the reason is because keeping these standards, it's not going to make your marriage any better. And the thing is that it's actually going to make getting married harder. So as we talk about these standards here today, I want you to look at all these standards with this framework right here. Important standards that we want you to keep and actually raise, or standards that are not as important that we want you to maybe lower, compromise, or maybe eliminate altogether. We're going to cover 5 from each category. We're going to blast through 9 of them, and we're going to spend time on the last one, the last not so important standard, okay? Before we do, let me open us in prayer. Father, we thank you for everybody here today, and we thank you that we have this opportunity to discuss these topics. And everyone is here because they want to explore dating and marriage. A wonderful thing that you've given to us, Lord. And I pray for all of us here that we would be humble and your Spirit would speak to us, that we would consider, Lord, our standards. Whether our standards are standards that you want or standards that we've created because we want those things that we want, not because they're necessarily good or of you, but just things that maybe the world has taught us. And we just pray that you would illuminate our hearts, Lord, and speak to us. We pray in your name, amen. All right, first, we're going to cover standards that need raising. And the first standard we're going to talk about is jealousy, anger, and bitterness. In every relationship that we give advice towards, we are always telling the guy or the girl that when you're in that relationship, from the time you have your first date to the time you say, I do, you always have to be of the impression that I am ready to end this relationship if I need to end this relationship. That's a very important approach. It sounds very weird. Because in our society, we're told that, no, you're out there, you need to win her over. You need to impress her. You need to put that ring on there, make sure she doesn't run away from you. It's about rushing and making the relationship work out. Our approach is this. Marriage is lifelong. You better make sure whoever you marry is someone that you should be marrying. And in order to do that, you need to be able to be in a relationship where you are willing to end it if you need to. Because your willingness to end the relationship is how you're able to properly evaluate the relationship. I'll say it again. Your willingness to end a relationship is how you're going to be able to properly evaluate the relationship. If you are in the relationship and you're saying to yourself, I got to make this work. This is my chance. I'm getting old. It has to work. Well, what's going to happen is you're going to overlook all those red flags in that person, all the red flags that your friends are telling you about. And some of the biggest red flags are jealousy, anger, and bitterness. If you see a person that you're dating who's jealous, constantly wanting to know what you're doing, insecure about who you're talking to, maybe they're the type of person that they get angry at every little thing. They have an explosive anger. Hopefully they're not hitting you, but if they're explosive and they're throwing things, that's a huge red flag right there. Maybe they're the type of person where if they get slighted in the smallest way, they just have this bitterness that is deeply rooted. You do not want to be in a marriage relationship with someone that exhibits that. If you see that, you need to slow down and you need to do something about it and talk to someone. Because the tendency is this: we feel like our chances are passing by us and we excuse the behavior because we want it to work out. And trust me, you do not want to be in the situation where you look back and say, I saw those red flags, but I ignored them. Because it's going to be way more costly at that point than if you were to continue to stay single. It's the fact. Whatever behavior you see in that person during dating, it is guaranteed going to be 2 times, 5 times, 10 times worse when you get married. So, what you excuse in dating often becomes what you endure in marriage. Next, sexual sin and purity. Sexual sin is bar none the most rampant sin that Christians are dealing with. And it's probably the least addressed sin in the church. When we say sexual sin, we're not just talking about sex itself, sex before marriage. We're talking about porn addiction. We're talking about even the more like really subtle sins, like maybe just constantly going on Instagram and looking at these Instagram models, exposing ourselves constantly to all this filth. Those types of sins may not seem like a big thing in our society. Our society thinks, like, if you say, hey, I feel bad about going online and checking out all these images on Instagram, if you say that to the world, they're going to look at you like, what is wrong with you? But here's the thing. If you want to have a marriage that pleases God, a marriage that you don't have to deal with all these issues, you do not want to lower the bar and date and marry a person who is knee deep in that sin. And if you were to talk to them, they would actually excuse it and say there's nothing wrong. Now, I get it if they're saying, like, I'm struggling with it, I'm working on it. Yes, that's one thing. But if they are just looking you in the face and say, what is wrong? You are the problem for bringing this up with me. You need to run. So don't overlook sexual sin, because this will damage and possibly destroy your marriage later on. Keep that high standard. Number 3, correction, forgiveness, and teachability. These 3 items, I liken them to, sorry, I missed a slide. These 3 things, I liken them to suspension, a suspension system in your car. Every car has shocks and struts. And what happens is this: when you're driving down the freeway, you're going to hit bumps and potholes. The shocks and struts are going to dampen that bump. And it's going to make a really bumpy ride that you're not going to enjoy into a ride that you're going to be able to manage. If you or your spouse are not correctable, not forgiving, not willing to forgive, and not teachable, what it means is this: your marriage, when it hits those potholes, when it hits those bumps, are going to be really, really bad. Potholes and bumps in marriage, it's going to happen to all of us, I guarantee it. It's a question of how well your relationship is as far as adapting and dealing with those bumps. And if you and your spouse are not correctable, not able to forgive, or not able to ask for forgiveness, and not teachable, every single one of those bumps is going to be a big bump. And eventually what happens is those bumps happen so much, and the ride gets so bumpy that one person is going to say, I want out. So when it comes to standards that you need to keep high, make sure you marry someone who is able to be corrected, someone who is able to forgive, someone who is teachable. Number 4, divorce checklist. Every single one of us, I said, has a dating checklist. every single one of us also has a divorce checklist. What do I mean by that? Well, when it comes to your checklist for dating and marrying someone, it's pretty obvious. They meet the checklist, you go into the relationship, you get married. The divorce checklist is you're in a marriage relationship. What is the list that you have in your mind or your spouse's mind that tells you and them that it's okay to get a divorce? What is that list? Everyone has a list. No one's ever written it down, but you need to know what it is. Biblically, our perspective is there's two instances that would allow for divorce. One, infidelity, and two, it would be abandonment by a non-Christian. There's some argument, maybe there's more, but that's our view. If you have a limited divorce checklist like us, and you marry someone who has a divorce checklist with 10 items, where any of these 10 items, if they get checked off, they feel like they are entitled to divorce. And on this checklist of 10 items, it could be something like, finances are really bad. He or she is not making enough money. Our intimate relationship is not that great. I'm not feeling happy, right? He or she is not able to give me a child. We're not living in the right zip code. If their checklist is that broad and your checklist is very limited, you are possibly going to find yourself in a situation that is really, really bad. And that situation is this. If the divorce checklist don't line up, your marriage might end before you want it to end. The other person, because their checklist is so broad, they're going to jump ship before you are willing to jump ship, and you do not want to be in that situation. Number 5, pursuit of God. A common question we always get asked is this: can a Christian marry a non-Christian? Raise your hand if you had a friend who asked that question before. It is a very common question. And when people ask us the question, what we say is this: it's the wrong question. Can a Christian marry a non-Christian is the wrong question, because if I say yes, then you could possibly go out there and say, okay, I'm going to go online, search all the Christians in my zip code, blah, blah, blah. Okay, he's a Christian, I'm going to marry him, right? No, it's not enough to marry a person simply because they are a Christian, because they say they're a Christian, or because they go to a church, or even because they check that on their dating profile. We believe whether you're a Christian, or a Muslim, or a Buddhist, or a Hindu, or atheist, or agnostic, or whatever it is, doesn't matter what you believe. We believe that the most important question to answer is, can I marry someone who doesn't share the same life direction or pursuit in life as me? That is a far more important question than just asking, can a Christian marry a non-Christian? And the reason is because this: your life pursuit, your purpose in life is the most important thing that should dictate who it is you marry and who it is you date. So let's just say, if you are a person whose life purpose is to glorify God and follow Jesus, which means you're a Christian, then it means that you should find someone who shares that life pursuit, and they also desire to glorify God and follow Jesus, which means that they necessarily have to be a Christian. So marrying a Christian is not the goal. Marrying a person who shares that same pursuit of whatever it is you're pursuing, and hopefully it's God, is the purpose that you're looking for. That's the type of person that you want to pursue. So the Christian or non-Christian box is not as important to check as the are we living for the same purpose box. That is the box you want to check. So these are the 5 standards that we believe you should hold high. Make sure that the person doesn't have this jealous, anger, bitter heart. You want to make sure that the person that you're dating doesn't struggle currently with that sexual sin. Whether they struggled with it before is a whole different question. We believe there's redemption when we become Christians. So we're not saying exclude anyone who's had any sexual past. And we're also saying that you need to make sure you marry someone who's correctable, someone who's willing to forgive, someone who's teachable, and also make sure that divorce checklist is the same. And lastly, make sure that the pursuit of God is in line with yours. By the way, we'll send out the slides too, whoever registered. Sorry, I should have said that earlier. Next, we're going to go to standards that need lowering. You guys ever heard this? Perfect is the enemy of the good. These standards that we are going to talk about are standards that we really like. And we think that these standards are going to make for a great marriage. But the thing is, these standards probably will not add much to your marriage at the end of the day. What we often look for in a spouse that keeps us from really getting out there and getting married is that we're looking for that perfect spouse. We have this long list of items on our checklist, and we want that perfect spouse that meets every single one of the 100 items on the checklist. And the thing is, if you're waiting for that, you're probably going to be waiting for a long, long time. Remember, these not as important standards are standards that if you keep these standards that we're going to talk about, it's not going to help your marriage be any better, but it's going to make getting married much harder. So as you listen to these standards, I don't want you to sit there and think that, oh, Brian's telling me to settle. Brian's telling me to lower my standards because I can't find someone, okay? That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is this. We want you to lower these standards because they're not standards, they're not biblical standards. They're standards that we or our society, our culture has taught us to have. And because we're having them, we're basically being burdened and held back by these standards. So it's not about lowering our standards and settling. It's about realigning what we're aiming for. So the first one is this: initial chemistry. We live in a culture and we watch romance movies that tell us that, hey, when you find your future spouse, you're going to know. It's like you walk through a door like this, a singles event, you walk in and all of a sudden your eyes catch with that guy or that girl at the corner, and then you guys see each other, and then everything is like a trance, and you guys are like slow motion, right? And then you smile at each other, and then the music starts playing, and then you know right there that is going to be your future spouse. And then eventually he's going to ask you for your number, and everything's going to work out. He's going to pick your favorite restaurant, without you ever telling him, right? And then when you're sitting at dinner, you're going to give say some jokes. None of your family or friends laugh at it, but this guy is the first person in the world to laugh at it. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, I could not write a better story. And you start to think to yourself, wow, I've met my perfect soulmate. Everything's going to be smooth. We're going to live happily ever after. That's what our society teaches us. If it was like that, it'd be amazing, okay? But I'll tell you this, it's not going to be like that. It's not going to be like that. And if you expect it to be like that, you are not going to let any person have a second date with you. Because there's going to be stuff that's going to happen during the date that's not ideal. Maybe you guys just don't click that well. You kind of click, you don't really click that well. But in your mind, you're thinking like, no, we should be clicking. We should be clicking all the time. There shouldn't be a dull moment on the first date. The conversation should just be boom, boom, boom. It's going. There should not be 2 seconds of silence. And if there's anything more than 2 seconds of silence, then oh my goodness, we're not meant for each other. If you have that high standard of that initial chemistry and you don't experience that high level of initial chemistry, and you say, you know what, it's not working out, you are going to put yourself in a very difficult situation where it's going to be very, very hard to find someone that's going to meet that initial chemistry level of demand that you have. The reality is this: that chemistry might not be there right away. And we encourage you, unless there are serious red flags, go on a second date. Go on a third date. Even if it's not overwhelming the first date or the second date. Don't stick to the ideal that you have in your head. We all have an ideal of how the dating process should work out. Maybe you're saying, oh, I'm willing to go on a first, second, third date. Well, maybe 2 months in, something happens and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm jumping ship. I didn't expect this. Well, I would encourage you guys, maybe it is something worth jumping ship over. Maybe it's something that you need to evaluate in a different way and say, hey, you know what? Every relationship from the first date to being on the altar and saying I do is going to have some hiccups. And if you have a very ideal approach towards how the whole process looks and you're not able to bend and be able to look at that situation in a different light, you might end up ending a potentially great relationship. before it begins. And what I'll say is that when it comes to chemistry, it could come later on. And for some of us, I'll say that because you have expected that initial spark and that chemistry and you haven't seen it in certain people, you have essentially friend zoned them. And I would say this, there might be people in your life right now that are friends of yours, that are great godly guys, great godly girls, but because you didn't have that initial spark with them, you are now in your mind saying things would never work out with him or her. But the reality is, it could. So I would encourage you guys to rethink some of the people in your life that you've already written off. Number 2, age and childbearing window. Okay? So this is another standard. First one is initial chemistry. Don't hold that high as far as what you expect in a dating relationship. Second, age and childbearing window. We all have an idea of who we want to marry at a sort of certain age range. And this point right here applies more for the older guys. It applies for everybody, but it's more so for the older guys. Now, I'm not saying that as an older guy, you have to date someone within 3 years of whatever your age is, okay? If you date someone who's younger, that's totally fine. If you can make it happen, more power to you. But the thing is this, the reality, and we're about reality here at our group, okay? We're going to say things that you probably never heard of before, but everyone in the church knows is true, but we just never say it. And we need to say it because otherwise, we assume that nobody else believes it. If you are looking and very specific about a certain age range of a person you're willing to date, you might want to think about expanding it a little bit. For example, if you're a guy and you're a little older, and you want to date some girl who's like mid-20s, early 30s, in that range because one, maybe you want to have kids still, which is great, or maybe you just want someone who's more attractive. If that's what you want and you can find it, wonderful. But the reality is this, if you are too far outside of your age range, it's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be a lot harder, and the thing is, the girls who are in that younger age range, most of the time, because we talk to them, most of the time they are not going to go for that guy who is over a decade, 15, 20 years older than her. That's the reality. And the reason why I share this is, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you continue to say, this is my standard, this age range, and continue to hold it, it's going to make dating and marriage much harder. And I'd rather the older guys in this group get married to someone that is not your ideal age, who's a little closer to your age, and not have kids, than for you to wait and wait for the next 5, 10 years, or maybe the rest of your life, and think that you are going to be able to meet someone in that ideal age range of yours. I'd rather you marry someone than to go through the next years thinking that you can find someone, which you may be able to, but the chances are much harder at that point. So, number 3, similar ministry, spiritual gifts, and hobbies. We all love people who share commonalities with us. That is what makes friendships great, relationships great. The problem is this. Sometimes those preferences are a little too high. We hold them too high. For example, everyone who joins BACS, we get to talk to you guys. You want to be an official member of BACS and you want to get all the events, you go through a quick call with us after you fill out a questionnaire. And during the call, we hear your story. And one of the things we notice is that there are certain people that have this very distinct desire for someone who shares that same passion as them. And I'm talking about the worship leader type people. You guys know what I'm talking about? If you are in worship leader, worship team, singing, playing an instrument, there's 90% probability you might fall into the category of what I'm talking about here, which is this. It essentially goes, hey, Bob, so tell me about the girl you're looking for. Oh, yeah, I'm looking for a girl who, I'm into worship. I do worship at my church, and I'm looking for someone who also has a passion for worship, and she needs to play the guitar and the flute as well. But she also needs to be able to play the cello, because sometimes we have cellos during like the Christmas events. If you can find someone like that, Great. But the thing is this. If you are so focused on those criteria, there's going to be a lot of great girls and guys out there who may not have a heart for worship, who don't play instruments, but have an amazing heart for God. And what's going to happen is you will want that person that fits all that stuff that you want, but then right here there's a guy or girl who could be an amazingly great spouse, but doesn't meet your desire for someone who shares the same desire for worship. Maybe it's not worship, maybe it's ministry direction. Some of us who are more like, I want to serve and evangelize the world, and I want to do missions and stuff like that. What we hear a lot of times is this: I've been called to country X, and I'm looking for a guy or girl that is called to country X as well. And then there's a guy or girl from country Y. They're called to country Y, which is right across the border. But then they meet each other. They're like, oh, no. You're country Y. I'm country X. I'm not going to date you because then we need to break it off in the end because I'm called to this and you're called to that. It happens all the time. And what happens is we miss out and we think that the calling is more important. We call it marrying the mission. We have this idea of this is the ministry that I'm pursuing, whatever it is. And I'm going to find a girl or guy to kind of come under that ministry and be kind of like a co-servant, co-partner with me in the ministry. And what happens is we're essentially married to that ministry, and then we're finding someone else to marry to support our endeavor towards that ministry. And essentially what happens is it's bad. It ends up us marrying the ministry first, and then the spouse comes to support that. Or maybe it's not even ministry, maybe it's not worship, maybe it's spiritual gifts, maybe it's hobbies. Some people are like, I'm very outdoorsy, and they will only date someone who's outdoorsy. And if you could find someone who's outdoorsy, great. But there are many great spouses for you that may not be as outdoorsy as you. And who knows, maybe that person can be outdoorsy later on. So, don't find someone that must have the same exact hobbies, ministry passions, and spiritual gifts as you. Rather find someone who loves God and pursues God like you. And then you figure out the hobbies, you figure out how you want to serve later on. Because here's the thing, life is very, very long in a sense, in that we as people change all the time. Nancy and I have been married for a little while, and we've changed. Both of us have changed. We've had different interests. We had different pursuits from before. We are not the same person that we were when we got married. And that's totally fine. Number 4, sexual and relational history. Ideally, in a perfect world, everyone we date, the first person you date, ends up being your spouse. And same for that person. In an ideal world, the first person you kiss is going to be your spouse, and your spouse's first kiss is going to be you. The first person that you have intimacy with would be your spouse, and for your spouse, you. That's an ideal world. But in our fallen world, that is not the case. Because in our world, we are so sexualized in our world. There's this culture of promiscuity. And unfortunately, the reality is in this world, even among Christians, there are many of us where we've made mistakes in this area. And because we've made mistakes in this area, it becomes a little more difficult. And sometimes we as Christians are in our mind, we have an item on our checklist that says, I want to marry someone where she and I, or he and I, are going to be intimate together for the first time ever in our lives. And if you hold to that requirement as an absolute no compromising standard, it's going to be really, really hard. And ideally, if you could find someone like that, it's great. Because if you find someone like that, I'll guarantee you this. You're going to have a lot fewer issues to deal with. But the reality is it's much more difficult, especially if you start getting older and older. The good news is this. By God's grace, God redeems us, and it's possible that any one of us who has a past that we're not proud of, we can be redeemed and we can enter into a relationship in a way where we are able to live a fulfilling relationship still. And we are able to enter into a relationship with someone else who might have that past, but be able to still have a fulfilling relationship by God's grace. So, is your ideal of your spouse's sexual history keeping you from potentially marrying someone who has made mistakes but can be redeemed? And if redeemed, that person can still have a wonderful marriage with you. And last, and by the way, all that is introduction. This is the message right here now. We're going to start. Sorry. I'm just kidding. It's not that long, okay? Last, we're going to talk about physical attraction. Physical attraction. Sorry, give me 1 second. Can you grab me something to drink? Sorry. Okay, physical attraction. This is the topic that a lot of times in the church we just don't talk about. So our society has been shaped and misshaped by beauty. Our society has misshaped how we look at beauty. And it's distorted how we look at beauty. And it trickles down into our approach towards dating, who we date, and who we marry. Think about this. Thank you. Throughout all of history, people were limited in the number of faces and bodies that they ever saw. Back then, there was no Instagram, no TV, no cameras, no magazines. You're probably born in the town, didn't leave 50 miles of the town, and died in the same town. And you probably knew maybe a few thousand people. So you were really limited as far as the people you were exposed to, and you were limited also as far as your standard of beauty. But today, it is totally different. Today, you have something called a phone. And on that phone, you could be exposed 24/7, 365 days a year if you want. And you could be bombarded with photos of the most handsome men, the most beautiful women, the most fit, the most provocative photos of the opposite sex. And you guys here are probably exposed to more beautiful people in 1 week than many people have in their entire lifetime. Not just beauty, but like an extreme level of beauty, right? Because nowadays, it's not just photos of people. We got AI going around, okay? And I'm telling you, you don't even know what's AI or what's not AI nowadays, right? I'm watching a video and I'm like, wow, look at this video. And Nancy's like, you're such a fool. You know, that's AI. Same with photos. Everything, every imperfection is able to be fixed. We could actually just create an AI image of our most ideal partner. Now, I'm not saying that people in the past didn't appreciate beauty. Back then, they appreciated beauty just like we appreciate beauty today. But the volume and the exposure to physical beauty today is unprecedented. And we don't even know how it's really programmed and conditioned our minds. We don't know it. Why? Because we're living in it. Like if I were to take a smartphone right now and travel back 1,000, 2,000 years and say, hey, check out the people of my time, and they start looking through the phone, they're going to be just like, their brains are going to explode, okay? Because they're not exposed to that. And not just photos of beautiful people, but just the sensualizing and the provocativeness of those photos is on a whole different level that people throughout history just have not experienced like we've experienced today. And what that does is that exposure, that constant exposure that we experience, it reshapes how we think. And it reshapes and affects what level of beauty we're looking for in who we date and who we marry. We get conditioned and programmed, and we start valuing physical looks to this really unrealistic extreme. And physical looks and beauty becomes the most important, and often the deciding factor as to whether we go on a first date or not. That is what's happening with us today. We are exposed to this level of beauty where we just are so inundated and so programmed that we are going to say yes or no. Am I going to go on a date with this person or not? And I know it is true. Why? All you need to do is check out online dating. When it comes to online dating, 99% of online dating is all about how you look. And that's how our society is built right now. Let me illustrate it in this way. I love good food. You could call me a food snob. Okay, go ahead, call me a food snob. Right? Okay. I would say that, hey, if I eat food, I have a very high standard of that food. Nancy and I, we brought our kids to Japanese restaurants. Nancy loves a California roll, which is great. I love sashimi, so we don't compete, right? Sashimi is delicious, and we bring our kids with us, and I remember there are many times where the kids are like, oh, what are you eating, Daddy? Oh, I'm eating sashimi. Oh, can I have some? Oh, no. You don't want sashimi. This is raw fish. You're a little kid. I don't want you to get sick. Daddy can handle raw fish. You know, this fish has mercury. You're a little kid. You're still growing, so I don't want you to be, having mercury in your brain. So it's okay. When you're 18 and you can afford it, you can pay for it yourself, right? And I'm thinking like, oh yeah, this is great. I have kids who don't eat sashimi. I have a wife that likes California rolls. Life is perfect. I made a mistake, guys. One time the kids asked to try sashimi. And I thought I was being a good parent. And I was like, okay, you could try it. And I tell you, when the sashimi touched their lips, their eyes were like, they tasted something that they've never tasted before. And after that, they started asking for sashimi. And the reason why I share that is because of this. Once you have this certain exposure to something, you get used to it. Once you have that sashimi, you can't go back to the California roll. And once you start having exposure to all these beautiful people all the time, you start to get conditioned where that is what you expect in the person that you're dating. And what happens is when the guy asks you out and he doesn't meet that requirement of physical beauty, or the girl is out there who's a great godly girl and you're thinking about asking her out, but she doesn't meet that requirement for physical beauty, what happens is, you know what? I'll pass. And I'm going to focus on the people that I have that initial physical attraction to. Our eyes have been exposed to so many beautiful people in our lives, like food. We don't think we could live with anything less than what we're used to. And what happens is we believe that whoever it is we marry must have that immediate physical attraction with us when we meet them. And if there isn't that immediate physical attraction right there, we're like, you know what? I won't talk to him or her. I won't go on a date with him or her. This is an unrealistic expectation that is keeping many of us from getting married. Okay? I'll say it again. This one thing here, your unrealistic expectations of beauty in your partner, is one thing that I could guarantee many of us in this room are not married because of this reason. Because we are not willing to go on a first date with someone who doesn't meet that immediate level of attraction that we require of them. We know that physical attraction is a factor. It is a factor that is too big too early on. And we see it. And the reason why we see it is because we talk to you guys. The guys will complain and they'll say to us, none of the girls say yes when I ask them out. Or the girls say, none of the guys are asking me out. So who's right, who's wrong? The complaint is always like, no one's asking me out, or no one's asking girls out. And when I ask girls out, they don't say yes. Guys are saying this, none of the girls say yes when I ask them out. The reality is this. I'm going to put this in the translator. What they're saying is, none of the girls who meet my desire for physical beauty say yes when I ask them out. And for the girls, it's this. None of the guys ask me out. What they're really saying is, none of the guys who meet my desire for physical beauty ask me out. Now, it's not 100% true, okay? There are instances where people aren't getting asked out, not for this reason. But a lot of times, this is the reason. Now, I'll throw in a caveat, okay? Because I don't want you guys to leave this group and tell people something that I didn't say. I'm not saying physical attraction should not matter in dating at all or in relationships. And I'm not saying that you should go out there and marry the most repulsive person in your eyes, okay? That's not what I'm saying. So don't go out there and say, hey, Brian believes you should just marry someone who's absolutely not attractive in your eyes and just marry them. That's not what we're talking about. Physical attraction is something you should look for, but the problem is we're looking for it too much too early on. That's the problem. We're looking for physical attraction too much too early on. Physical attraction is a part of the equation, but the problem is it's too big a part of the equation too early on in the dating process. And that is keeping many of you guys from getting married. And in the church, a lot of times we are not helping the single Christians deal with these views that are holding us back. This prevents you from a potentially good relationship. It prevents you from dating someone who is potentially a great match for you. And what happens is you say no to the date because the physical attractiveness level is not there. And what happens is you don't allow that potential relationship to blossom. I want to balance it out and say this. Good looks are valued, okay? Good looks are a good thing. If you have good looks, that's a good thing, okay? We should not, and this is not what I'm saying, so don't leave here and say good looks is a bad thing. Good looks is a good thing. Good looks is something that if you read the Bible, you read the book Song of Solomon, you will hear them talking about each other's beauty. And they just are just so ravished by each other physically. When you read the book of Genesis, and you hear about Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and you hear about Queen Esther later on in the Old Testament, they're always described in a way where it's about their beauty. So beauty is a good thing, okay? The Bible never denies physical beauty. It assumes that physical beauty is real and that physical beauty is a good thing. But the Bible also cautions about beauty's limits. Proverbs 31:30 says, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. We look for that guy or that girl, and we are just very interested in the external. Their looks, their beauty, their charisma, how they carry themselves. We look at all the things on the outside, and we often use that to gauge whether we want to go on a date with that person or not. But the thing is this, what is more important is what is inside. How they love the Lord, how they fear the Lord, how they want to surrender to the Lord. Proverbs 11:22 says, like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. You could take a gold ring and you could put it on a pig, but the pig is still going to be a pig. And that pig is not going to look any better. No one says, oh, wow, look at that pig. It's a beautiful pig, right? Because of the gold ring. And that's the same thing when it comes to beauty. You could have a really beautiful person, a handsome guy. But the thing is, if their character is not there, it should be a no-go. Because beauty has its limits. So, how does this, an unhealthy desire for physical beauty in our spouse, affect our dating and marriage prospects? The problem is not beauty, but an unrealistic fixation on beauty too early in the relationship. If you can get over this, you will increase your chances of getting married. Because now you're opening up yourself to a lot of potentially great people that you wrote off before. So how does an unrealistic fixation on beauty affect dating? One, it closes doors. Closes doors to potentially great spouses and makes marriage a lot harder. If physical attraction is the deal breaker for your first date, if physical attraction is what tells you yes or no on a first date, then what happens is you're automatically going to eliminate many godly, high-quality guys and girls out there who don't meet that initial physical requirement that you have. And what that means is this, you're going to have fewer prospects and a smaller pool. And the thing about dating is this, you want to have as big a pool as you can. Not that you want to date all the people, okay? But that you are able to open your eyes to the other person who is not necessarily as physically attractive right off the bat, but still has all the great qualities that you're looking for in a spouse. Also, number two, it sets marriage on a weak foundation. If you have an unhealthy emphasis on physical attraction, what it does is it trains us to overlook everything else about the person. We're so fixated on beauty, and we say, oh, wow, finally I found this person that's beautiful, and they're actually someone that actually likes me and wants to go on a date with me. And what happens is we find that because we're so fixated on beauty. We find a beautiful person, and we say to ourselves, oh, I need to make this work out because I'm never going to meet someone like this ever again. That's how the world is. And what happens is you start excusing things, and you start overlooking those red flags. It's like shopping for a car. If you go to the dealership and say, you know what, I need a Honda Civic, something that saves gas. So you go to the Honda dealership. Or maybe you're like, hey, I need a pickup truck because I need a pickup truck for my work to move things around. But you go in there, and then what happens is you see this, right? You say, I want a Honda Civic, I want a Toyota Tacoma, and then all of a sudden you see this. A red convertible, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, look at that. I can imagine myself in that. Look at how beautiful and shiny, the sparkling rims, the leather seats. I can see myself driving on a Saturday afternoon with the wind blowing through my hair, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, that's what I want. And if you keep your eyes on this too much, you're going to get fixated on this, and you're going to start thinking like, you know what, I don't need the Honda Civic. I don't need that Toyota Tacoma. I want that red Mercedes convertible. And what's going to happen is when you're fixated to something, you're going to forget about everything else that matters. You're going to be fixated, and you're going to think, you know what, 2 doors, that's fine. No trunk space, I can live with that. You know? You're going to think to yourself like, oh, you know what, this is like 3 times the cost of a Honda Civic. It's okay, I'll have installment payments for this. I'll deal with it. You start rationalizing. Why? Because you want to make that happen. And if you prioritize beauty too much and you find someone who matches that standard of beauty that you want, I'm afraid that you might say, hey, I'm going to make this happen no matter what. And you're going to find yourself in a very bad situation later on, potentially. So, what's the solution? Physical attraction is a thing. How do we go about physical attraction if there isn't that immediate physical attraction? I want to share with you immediate attraction and developed attraction. Immediate attraction is basically what we know. You see someone and boom, you're attracted to them physically, right there. It's very, very easy. And the problem is this. It happens, but it doesn't always happen to us, right? Maybe we're attracted to someone, but maybe they're not interested in us. Well, I want you guys to understand this. When it comes to physical attraction, our problem is this. We think that it's either there or it will never be there. We think that if it's not there in the beginning, then it's never going to be there later on, and it's never going to happen. And that is the flaw in our thinking. And this is straight from what our world tells us. Our world tells us that make sure that physical attraction is there. If it isn't there, don't even ask him out, ask her out. But here's the thing. What if we're wrong? What if physical attraction can be developed, but we are just taught that it can't be? What if we give someone a chance and it's possible that the physical attraction can develop to a point where we would actually be so physically attracted to them, but never thought that it could possibly happen? If that's the case, it would change everything about how you approach dating. And I would say this, that it is possible. See? I must have said something right there. Okay. So, let me share with you.
I thought you did it.
Oh, sorry. No, I don't think. You know what? I'm having a problem with. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, let me share with you PIES. P-I-E-S. It is a model for us to evaluate attraction. Okay? It has 4 components, 4 different areas of attraction. P, which is physical, I, which is intellectual, E, which is emotional, and S, which is spiritual. These are 4 different areas, components of attraction, different categories, if you will. And the world focuses on one of these. And the one that it focuses on is P, physical attraction. And if there is not physical attraction, then nothing else really matters in the world. right? We don't care about anything else. We just want that physical attraction right there in the beginning. And that is the wrong approach. The proper approach is this. The proper approach is to consider all of them. And I would actually say the spiritual is actually a higher priority early on, and the physical should be a lower priority early on. If you understand that it's not just about focusing on the P, but focusing on really all four of them, and understand this next thing. Understand that the intellectual, emotional, and the spiritual attraction, once that's built up, can help develop the physical attraction. Let me illustrate in this way. So, imagine if the four different categories are 4 piles of wood. What you want ideally in a relationship is that all 4 of these piles start burning. If the pile burns, it means you have good attraction in that area. So if you have one pile, like the physical attraction, it's on fire, it's burning, that means that you have that physical attraction with that person. Or the spiritual attraction, if it's burning, that means you guys have a good connection spiritually. You guys can talk about God. You guys can pursue God in a similar way. You guys see eye to eye when it comes to living your lives for God. Or maybe the intellectual. You feel like you could talk to this person about things. You guys are able to exchange ideas, talk about politics, talk about life, talk about the Bible. Or maybe you have an emotional connection where you guys want to be together, where you guys are having fun together and you care for each other. Well, the thing is this, if one pile is burning, it could burn over into one of the other piles. So if the flame is strong enough and big enough, it could eventually cause a log to tip over to the other end, and one of the other piles, which was not burning, starts to burn. And this happens all the time. You could be on the physical pile, not burning at all. But then the intellectual, or maybe the emotional, or maybe the spiritual piles are burning. And what happens is it becomes like a big flame. They just all become like one big pile of fire. And what happens is eventually that physical pile gets hot, and eventually it starts to burn. And I'll tell you this happens a lot. And it happened with Nancy and me. Now I'll tell you something that you guys might not believe. But when Nancy first met me, she was not physically attracted to me. You can ask her that, okay? She wasn't like, oh my goodness, this is the guy, right? When Nancy met me, she did not have any physical attraction. She actually didn't get physically attracted to me till months later. And what happened was we started hanging out, we started dating, and we just had great conversations. I mean, we would just talk for 4 hours straight without any aids, questions. We would just keep talking. And we would just have these intellectual conversations. We would talk about everything. And we had a back and forth, and it was just so smooth. And then we also shared the spiritual connection, this similar way of looking at God and wanting to live our lives for God. We also had this desire to use our spiritual gifts. And we were very focused and very intentional about that. And then over time, there was this emotional connection. She started to enjoy being with me. She started having fun. She started to want to hang out with me. And eventually, months later, the physical attraction started for her. And you can ask her about this later yourself. Other areas of attraction can grow and eventually develop the area of physical attraction. But you need 2 things. Okay? You need 2 things for this to happen. Are you ready? The 2 things are this. 1, you need time. You need to give it time. Because without time, that pile is not going to grow. You need to grow the other 3 piles, intellectual, emotional, and the spiritual. You need to have time to grow the flame in those piles before it spreads onto the physical attraction pile. And also what you need is this. You need to give it a chance. If you don't give it a chance for the intellectual, the emotional, and the spiritual attraction to develop, that physical attraction pile will never catch on fire because we don't give it a chance. Most single Christians are just not willing to give it a chance, not willing to go on a first date because they feel that immediate physical attraction is what they need. And the guys don't ask the girls out because they don't experience that initial attraction. And the girls don't say yes because they don't experience that initial attraction. And this is what is keeping many of us from getting married. The absence of immediate physical attraction is not proof that physical attraction will never develop. If you keep this in mind, then you will be approaching dating in a whole different way. And in a different way that I think will increase your chances of actually getting married. So the takeaways are this. First takeaway is physical attraction is a good thing. It's a good thing, but it's not the only thing. Especially, it's not the only thing in the beginning. Number two, it's okay to improve your physical attractiveness. And we didn't talk much about this, but we are of the mindset, you got to be practical. If physical attraction is what you are looking for in the other person, guess what? The other person is probably looking for physical attraction in you as well. And it is totally okay for a single Christian person to make sure that they are as physically attractive as they can. I was not like that when I was in my 20s. I thought, like, you know what? She's going to love me from my heart. She's going to love me because of my pursuit for God. You know, it doesn't matter how I don't shower. It doesn't matter what I wear. None of that matters. All that matters is I need to know that she loves me for who I am inside, and that's it. But here's the thing. It's okay to work on your physical attractiveness, and I would encourage you guys to do it. Especially for the guys, okay? Guys, like, do not wear that yellow dingy t-shirt with a stretched out collar, okay, that you wear watching football on a first date, okay? Don't wear some shoe that's like, you know, has holes in it and all that kind of stuff. Just be decent and be nice. We're not talking about you got to be a supermodel, you got to have 10% body fat. We're not talking about that. We're just saying, like, do your very best to not sabotage your own chances of getting married. Because a lot of us, we are sabotaging ourselves by just not taking care of the things that we need to take care of. Next, be open to date even if there is no initial physical attraction. If a person asks you out and the qualities are there, you don't have to know that you're going to marry them. But if the qualities are there and you're thinking, like, you know what, they're decent, and the physical attraction is not there, we say go on that first date. Maybe even a second and third date, possibly. Do not just say, you know what, the physical attraction is not there, I am not going to give it a chance. Number 4, revisit some friends who have godly qualities which you have friend-zoned. In your mind, you probably have some friends that maybe don't meet your level of requirement for physical attractiveness, but they have all the other qualities that are great. I want you guys to reconsider those people and say, maybe I need to take some action with these individuals in my life. And lastly, physical attraction can be developed through intellectual, emotional, and spiritual attraction if you give it time and if you give it a chance. And lastly, we've been talking about your requirement of physical attraction for the person you're dating. Now, I want to talk about briefly the other side of the equation, which is this. What about for those of us who we feel like we're not that attractive? What about for those of us who we feel like we've kind of been overlooked in life because of how we look? It's a real thing. What about those of us who feel like we're born a certain way, maybe we're not tall enough, or maybe we just feel like we're looking older, and we feel like, you know what, when it comes to the physical beauty part, I'm just kind of like in the dust. And I'm not able to keep up, and I'm in a place where no one would be interested in me. The thing is, there is good news. If you believe you are in that situation where you're unattractive and your chances of getting married are very slim, it's a real thing, okay? But here's the thing. If you are a Christian who is pursuing God, and you are seeking someone who is pursuing God, you are in the best place that you can be. The reason is because of this. Because God's place in your heart and God's place in your future spouse's heart, whoever that is the great equalizer that balances the dating field. Because when it comes to Christian dating and marriage, it should not be just about physical attraction in the beginning and that's it. And if we can change that view, I think that a lot of us who are not as physically attractive are going to find out that we might have an edge in certain areas that we never knew. So spiritual attraction is a whole new realm of attraction that we Christians can actually be very strong in, because we as Christians are approaching dating, marriage, and life in a whole different way from the rest of the world. Let me illustrate in this way. We had the 4 piles, right? Physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. I would argue this, that the spiritual pile actually is much more important than all the other piles. We look for physical attraction first. That's the pile we focus on. But I would say, if you can focus on the spiritual pile, the other things are much easier to follow through with. The other things will fall in place. If you feel unattractive physically, and there's nothing stopping you from being a person with the most beautiful inner self, the most beautiful heart. And what we want is folks in BACS to be transformed by the renewing of their mind. Where your mind is renewed and you go out there and you're no longer looking for just that beautiful person, but now you start treasuring the things that God treasures. And if you do that, I guarantee you're going to find maybe some of the people who are maybe not so physically attractive to you in the beginning end up being people that you're like, you know what, those are the qualities that I'm actually looking for. And that is going to change the entire dynamic of Christian dating. This is how the world looks at attraction. If the physical attraction is there, then it's great. If physical beauty is there, you get all the dates. If the physical beauty is not there, the door is closed for us. But maybe in the non-Christian world, it's more like this. Intellectual and emotional are part of it as well, but the physical is still a big, big, big part of it. I would say that when it comes to us as Christians, the PIE's motto should be like that, where we are actually valuing the spiritual things to a higher level than all the other things, especially in the beginning. You see, the reason why those of us who maybe don't feel like we're that attractive have a chance, and the only way we'll have a chance is this: when God and the way He looks at people permeates into the way His people look at each other. When God's way of looking at us permeates into us and we start looking at each other in a way that God looks at us, where we start looking not at the externals, but we start looking at what is inside. 1 Samuel 16, Samuel was actually looking for a replacement for King Saul. And he went to Jesse's house and he saw Eliab, Jesse's eldest son. And in Samuel's mind, he was thinking, you know what? This guy right here, Eliab, is going to be the king. And he in his mind said, this is king material. I don't know what it was. Maybe Eliab was tall. Actually, I think it says he's tall. He's probably really good looking, chiseled jaw, probably had a good frame on him, had amazing flowing hair. And when you looked at Eliab, you would say to yourself, that guy right there should be the king. But what God said is this. 1 Samuel 16:7. The Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. Through human eyes, we have a biased lens for determining who makes a good king. And through human eyes, we have a biased lens for determining who makes a good spouse. And in Christ, our physical unattractiveness and our shortcomings are not ignored. They are overshadowed. And the good news is this: for those of us who feel like we're not attractive, you do not need to meet the world's standards of beauty in order to get married. You only need to find one brother. You only need to find one sister who sees your heart who sees you as God sees you. And if you find that person, then you'll be set. And that's why we have this group. We have this group because we are here to challenge your views of dating and marriage, the views that are holding you back. And we want to equip you so that you value the things that really matter. And for the things that don't matter, we want you to put them aside. And also, we want to connect you with other Christians who share the same view, where you are looking for the things that God is looking for, and not the things that the world tells you that you should be looking for. Let's pray. Father, we thank you that in you, Lord, you see us in a way that the world does not see us. You see us, Lord, in spite of our sin, and you cherish us, Lord, and through you we have grace and redemption. And I pray for all of us here that we would be freed from the lies of the world, that we would be renewed by the transforming of our own minds, that we would see life, marriage, and dating in a whole different way. And as a result, Lord, it would be the beginning of a new approach, a fresh approach towards finding that spouse. And I pray for everyone here that we would be diligent, Lord, that if we desire marriage, that it be something that we would pursue, and that we would question, Lord, how it is we are approaching dating and marriage. Because there are certainly areas, Lord, that we're doing it in that may be holding us back. And I pray for those of us who feel like we are not there physically and that we have been overlooked through all these years. And I just pray, Lord, that we would hold tight and we would put our hope in you. That through you and your transformation in every Christian's heart, that we believers would not be like the world, and that we would be people who would cherish and treasure the things that you cherish and treasure. And that you would change in this Bay Area, among the Christian singles, a new way of seeking a spouse that doesn't pursue the ways of the world, but glorifies you. We thank you and pray in your name. Amen. Okay, guys. So I wanted to share. Thank you, guys. I want to do some announcements first right now, real quick, okay? Then we're going to go into our small group, and then we're going to do a Q&A, okay? So, announcements real quick. Sorry. We'll do this later. So, how to connect with us. If you are not a member of Bay Area Christian Singles, go to bayareachristiansingles.com/join, okay? You have to be a Christian. You have to be single, not in a serious relationship. You're open to dating. If you're going through a divorce, you have to have a finalized divorce. And lastly, actually, I said it already, you have to be open to dating and marriage. So Christian, single, and open to dating and marriage. Invite us to speak at your group, whatever it is. If it's a college group, we'll go to your college group. If it's a singles 20s group, we'll go to a group. We will speak at your church, your event, for free. Everything we do at BACS, we don't make any money off of this. It's a mom and pop operation. It's all free. Why? Because the only way to help you guys find someone is if more and more Christians out there have a transformed mind, like the things that we're talking about here today. Also, share and invite your friends to BACS. Why? Because this group is largely comprised of the people you invite. And if you're going to invite people to the group, that's going to help us expand the group. And remember that when you invite people, they have to meet the requirements that we mentioned. If you want to share your email with other people in this group, I want you to scan that QR code. What happens is I will send out an email with everybody who opts in, your name and your email, and that allows you guys to connect with people. Maybe you met someone, you didn't get their contact information. Maybe you want to organize an event and you want to let people know or find other people to help you organize the event. If that's the case, scan the QR code and enter your name and your email. Later on, outside on the registration table, there's also going to be a QR code to share your email as well, and you can scan it over there. Couple events. Next Saturday, there's an event called Christian Singles Mingle.